You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, the bitter and twisty antitrust contingent in the Tory party are out to claim the scalp of yet another Prime Minister. And they're not even trying to hide it.
But it's possible that you could change leader again if she does badly.
Look, of course, anything is possible. Anything is possible.
So, with Truss on the ropes after less than a month and a government civil war brewing over benefits, does this prove the Conservatives made a mistake deposing Boris Johnson? Well, joining me on my superstar panel tonight, a man who no doubt has a very strong opinion on this, former MEP and the father to the former PM, Stanley Johnson. He'll debate alongside top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mind you, Truss hasn't exactly been lion-hearted herself, bizarrely refusing to say if she trusts her Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng.
Are you sure you don't want to say you trust your Chancellor?
I work very, very closely with my Chancellor. We're very focused on getting the economy growing.
Just cannot get my head around that one, but in my digest next, I'll explain why Truss must return to the tough, no-nonsense Iron Lady in waiting we saw during the leadership contest if she wants to hold on in number 10. As Suella Braverman announces plans to ban anyone who crosses the channel from claiming asylum.
If you deliberately enter the United Kingdom illegally from a safe country, you should be swiftly returned to your home country or relocated to Rwanda.
So is she the Home Secretary to finally end the illegal migrant crisis and save the Tory party? We'll break down her big speech today at 10 p.m. Imagine how terrified you'd be if this was your nurse.
I'm sorry, but if you have voted Conservative, you do not deserve to be resuscitated by the NHS.
Hang on. Unbelievable. So with a medical professional telling Jeremy Vine on Channel 5 that Conservative voters don't need to be resuscitated, has the nastiness of the left finally been exposed? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie gives his reaction to a slew of Liberal hate. He's the outsider at 9:40. As Meghan revives her Spotify podcast after her late Majesty's death with a story about being naked in a spa as a teenager.
It's a very humbling experience for a girl going through puberty because you enter a room with women from ages 9 to maybe 90, all walking.
Is that undignified approach to royal life why she's been unseated by Kate as America's Queen Bee? Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden breaks down the Duchess's fall from grace in the royal rankings and the US at 10:20. As Donald Trump launches a £416 million lawsuit against CNN for comparisons to Hitler, will he be able to win his war against the mainstream media? US superstar journalist and legal analyst Megyn Kelly looks at that at 9:50. And after he sparked an international row, is Elon Musk's suggestion that Ukraine should give up land to end the war with Russia a valid one? I'll get your verdict on this in tonight's Clash at 9:25. Plus, I'll meet the widow and children's author reduced to driving a truck simply for standing with J.K. Rowling. Gillian Phillip finally uncancelled on this shocking story at 10:40 tonight. And which member of the Tory party is our resident lefty Rebecca backing for Greatest Britain? Find out when I crown the next GBUJ at 10:50. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though, and I know it's been another brutal day for Liz Truss as Prime Minister, so thank goodness our very own Darren McCaffrey gave her a brief moment of respite earlier with these quick-fire questions.
Just a few quick-fire questions, if I can. What's your favourite type of cheese?
There's quite a few.
A British cheese, though.
I do like Stilton.
Your favourite Taylor Swift song?
Blank Space.
If you had to go for a cup of tea, who would you choose, Rishi Sunak or Michael Gove?
Both of them, of course.
And if it's another life, another career, what else would you think you would do if you weren't being Prime Minister?
Be a food critic.
Oh, bless her. My superstar panel are here all night. Top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, the famed environmentalist Stanley Johnson, and the feminist writer Rebecca Reid. Now, I have to say, Rebecca, though, is also a Taylor Swift superfan, so I presume she adored this answer.
Your favourite Taylor Swift song?
Blank Space.
Find out what you want, be that girl for a month. Wait, the worst is yet to come. Oh no, so it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over, if the high was worth the pain. They'll tell you I'm insane, but I got a
Blank Space.
baby, and I'll write your name.
Oh, Rebecca Reid, come on. Do you love Truss now? She's a Taylor fan like you.
Whoever made that video needs a raise. That was the best thing I've ever seen. It's very, very difficult for me to say anything bad about Taylor Swift, but the worst thing I can say about her is that Liz Truss is a big fan of hers. Also, Blank Space is an obvious choice. That's not like a niche album track from like an early album.
OK, well, what's your favourite Taylor Swift song then?
Oh, probably Lakes, which is the bonus track from Evermore.
Do you want to know mine? Out of the Woods.
Oh, really?
Sorry for
That's
this
a great
niche
one. That's about
Taylor
Harry
Swift
Styles.
reference. We need to move on very quickly, don't we? Amanda, do you want to contribute to this? No.
She's just such a fake. She doesn't even know who Taylor Swift is. Nor really do I. She's a big Queen fan. And I was thinking about this today, you know, when she was going to be asked what her favourite song was. It's got to be Bohemian Rhapsody, you know that track? I'm just a poor girl, nobody loves me, spare me life from this monstrosity. That's
Goodness
what she really
me,
likes.
Stanley, she's been cruel already. We're only like 2 minutes in and she's already been nasty to Liz Truss. Oh, my goodness. Look, my digest on the Tory coup against Truss in just a moment. But first, the news with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dan. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. In a GB News exclusive, the Chancellor has told us an announcement detailing his medium-term fiscal plan will not be brought forward and will be delivered as planned on the 23rd of November. Kwasi Kwarteng has been under pressure to give more details on how he'll reduce the country's debt. It follows market turmoil, which saw sterling plummet after the mini-budget was announced 11 days ago. The Chancellor told us fiscal decisions were made during a very difficult period.
It was a very quick time that we did it. And also you've got to remember the context. I mean, what was extraordinary about that month was that we had a new government and also we had the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So we had a nation in mourning. And then literally, I think 4 days after the funeral, we had the mini-budget. It was high speed, high pressure environment. And we could have got, as David Cameron used to say, prepared the pitch a bit better.
Well, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she's written to Kwasi Kwarteng demanding greater transparency.
This coming Friday, when the Office of Budget Responsibility gives the government their forecast, the public should see it as well, and financial markets need to see it. The volatility that we've had in the last week and a half with a huge spike in borrowing costs for government and also for families through mortgage rates is causing huge anxiety. And government now need to get a grip, publish those forecasts. If they've got nothing to hide, what is stopping them?
The Home Secretary has imposed a blanket ban on anyone entering the UK illegally from seeking refuge. Suella Braverman has used her conference speech to announce the government's latest attempt to curb the growing number of people arriving on UK shores. Under new plans, migrants crossing the Channel will be banned from claiming asylum in Britain. It's as the latest figures show more than 33,500 migrants have arrived so far this year.
It's not racist for anyone ethnic minority or otherwise, to want to control our borders. It's not bigoted to say that we have too many asylum seekers who are abusing the system. It's not xenophobic to say that mass and rapid migration places pressure on housing, public services, and community relations. I reject the left's argument that it is hypocritical for someone from an ethnic minority to tell these truths.
And in other news, a 14-year-old boy is in custody after being arrested on suspicion of the murder of another teenager in Gateshead. Northumbria Police says it found a 14-year-old boy with injuries consistent with having been caused by a bladed article just after 8 o'clock last night. A 13-year-old girl also remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton Tonight.
Get a grip. I agree with that powerful front page message from the Daily Mail newspaper today to the floundering new Prime Minister Liz Truss, who promised to be the Iron Lady reincarnated for 2022, and then U-turned the moment the pressure from the political establishment and the MSM became too hot to handle. The problem is now that the bitter and twisted Truss opposition within her own party has become empowered. They know she's weak. They're betting she'll give in to pressure again. And they're disgracefully prepared to neutralise her bold agenda and render our new PM politically impotent. The biggest snake in all of this is Michael Gove. Yes, there he is. The constant thorn at the side of Tory leaders, who was part of the push to depose Boris Johnson, but now wants to depose his replacement after less than a month. The plotting sacked cabinet minister who first backed Kemi Maidanock and then switched to Rishi Sunak in a failed bid to keep Truss out of number 10 was key to the humiliating climb down over slashing the top tax rate to the same level as during Tony Blair's government. Now he's trying to engineer another embarrassing U-turn over Truss's desire to reject increasing benefits at the rate of inflation and instead fix them at the growth of average earnings, so as not to punish people who are working hard in the private sector while facing lower than inflation salary increases. Today it was left to the Home Secretary Suella Braverman to suggest Gove and his fellow snakes are staging a coup against the PM.
I understand the reasons why. Ultimately, I'm very disappointed that members of our own parliamentary party staged a coup, effectively, and undermined the authority of the Prime Minister in an unprofessional way. We are one party. The Prime Minister has been elected she's got a serious mandate to deliver. She did talk about tax cuts very extensively all throughout the summer in a pretty exhausting process.
Pretty clear.
She's doing what she put on the tin, and to mix my metaphors, but we should be supporting her, and I'm very disappointed, to say the least, by how some of our colleagues have behaved.
Amen to Suella Braverman, by the way, because this is a coup. Fracking is the next issue wet Tories are targeting for a Truss U-turn. And even her ministers know the mood is so febrile they can say to hell with cabinet collective responsibility in an attempt to pressure her into backdowns in public. Like the Leader of the House and her former leadership rival Penny Mordaunt, who made it clear she opposes the PM's benefits plans during a radio interview with some odd bloke this morning.
Do you think the benefits should rise in line with inflation?
I have always supported, whether it's pensions, whether it's our welfare system, keeping pace with inflation. It makes sense to do so. So that's what I voted for before, and so have a lot of my colleagues. But we do need to look at where we can make efficiency savings, just because of the cost challenges on those department budgets. Yeah.
So to quote the far too realistic political comedy The Thick of It, this is now an omni-shambles, because not even Truss is providing loyalty to her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, who is taking the fall for the botched top tax rate cut announcement. Watch.
I've heard you not answer the question about whether you trust your Chancellor, given the scale of the mistake that you say he made. Are you sure you don't want to say you trust your Chancellor?
I work very, very closely with my Chancellor. We're very focused on getting the economy growing.
And that's what what people in Britain want. We're facing difficult economic times. We're seeing rising interest rates around the world, very serious issues with energy prices and inflation, and we've acted decisively. If you remember, people were facing energy bills of up to £6,000. We put in place the energy price guarantee. The average household won't have to pay more than around £2,500.
And what we're focused on is getting on with the job.
You still haven't said you trust your Chancellor.
So odd. I cannot get my head around that. But it is amazing how the blob have already got their way and torpedoed the straight-talking, no-nonsense Truss who answered every question directly while on the campaign trail. Even Truss supporters are despondent at what's gone down. One minister told The Sun they've taken the bat off Boris, broken it into pieces and given chunks to the different warring sides to beat each other with. It's like Lord of the Flies. Another who supports Truss told The Times, I'm livid. I begged her not to back down. She's now totally owned by them. Whatever the dickheads in the One Nation group want, she now has to give them. It's just so weak. It's pathetic. I have to be honest, I fear that unless Truss returns with a blistering conference speech to electrify the base and reassure the country tomorrow morning, then the dark forces attempting to force her out of office after less than a month will only get stronger. As the Daily Telegraph's brilliant Christopher Hope wrote today, with Boris Johnson barely a month out of office, this party conference feels like a circus where the ringmaster has gone missing and the lions have eaten one of the acrobats and are starting on the second. And make no mistake, that is bad for democracy and bad for Britain. I desperately want Truss to get her premiership back on track. I am backing her because 2 years of inertia and Tory civil war will deliver the nightmare Starmer-Sturgeon coalition from hell. But how can she do it when she refuses to say she trusts her Chancellor or rule out further U-turns? To respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Patel, conservationist and former MEP Stanley Johnson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. So, Amanda Patel, this is an omni-shambles, isn't it? Pure
Can
and
I
simple.
just set one thing straight, Dan?
Please.
I'm not an anti-Liz Truss person. I'm a Conservative. The reason I'm wearing all black tonight and my mother's rosary beads and her cross that she gave me before she died is that I am praying that she'll come out of this, because there's no alternative. You can't change the leader now. I just don't understand that. You know that clip that you had of her refusing to back.
What was going on?
I don't know.
I mean, you used to advise William Hague, right? You were one of his top advisors. Surely, if you're advising her, you would just say you trust your Chancellor.
Yeah, but sometimes, and I'm not saying this about either characters, but sometimes people are on a spectrum that they are incapable of understanding the emotional response. It's even like when Kwasi went up. That's me just fanning myself. When Kwasi went up to give his speech, which was a great speech, why couldn't he have just said, I'm really sorry, I got it wrong, I misjudged. He said they use this kind of weird language. They're incapable of using a language that connects with us. But, you know, the only hope is that idiots like that, you know, penny farthing politician Penny Mordaunt actually ends up supporting, you know...
I thought she was your mate. She used to work for you.
She used to work for me, and she was useless then, and she's useless now. She was an underling in Hague's... She was a very mediocre person. I just hate to see them taking the opportunity. I hate this, and everyone who gets up will be damaged. Not the least Michael Gove, who's the jackal of the pack.
Stanley Johnson, you have just returned from Tory party conference. Tell me everything. What was the mood like?
Well, I just wondered if I was at the same conference which you were all talking about. I mean, I saw a lot of cheerfulness. I saw a lot of people saying, hi, hello, how's he doing? You know, referring obviously to my son.
Your erstwhile son.
You know, I saw...
He's not erstwhile son. He's an erstwhile Prime Minister.
Very good
Give
point.
him a break.
Erstwhile son, erstwhile Prime Minister. Not often you get a chance to use the word erst.
It's a good word.
It's a good word. In fact, then you could use the word erst just by itself.
I think more inappropriate was that Dan said decade a minute ago. That was really exciting.
That was a Tory cabinet minister quoted in the newspaper of record, The Times.
Just coming to the point.
Yes,
I was in the hall. And by the way, I have been in Tory party conferences where that hall is not full. Yesterday, when Kwasi Kwarteng spoke, that hall was full, and it was full to the rafters, you know, right up to the gods.
So Stanley, what do you think's going on here? Is this about the media trying to portray something that's not going on?
I think what has happened is that there's a sort of story to do with this 45p tax, 45 tax. It's not much of a story. As far as I'm concerned, I'm much, much more worried. I don't want to get too technical here, but I'm much, much more worried about the movement which seems to be present now in this Tory government to say, by Jove, we've got to make a dash for economic growth, and if we have to trash the environment on the way, we'll do it. That does...
Steve Baker, who's obviously a Northern Ireland minister, saying we can't afford net zero.
That does alarm me. That sort of thing does alarm me.
We can't afford it, can
But
we,
I think... No, of course we can. We absolutely can. If we don't get the environment right, we don't get the economy right. Because one thing is 100% sure. Our trading partners, and I'm talking particularly about the EU partners, they're not going to stick to the free trade agreements which we negotiated unless we keep our side of the agreement, which is the level playing field. Anyway, coming back to something slightly more cheerful, I didn't see this as a doom and gloom meeting at all. There was a moment when we had lockdown and we couldn't get in and we couldn't get out. But, you know, that was life.
The left-wing protest. OK, so Rebecca Reid, two very different Tory views there. We've literally got Amanda in mourning, Stanley saying...
But supporting.
Actually, but supportive.
Supportively in mourning.
Actually, it wasn't that bad, and this is just a creation by the liberal media like you.
I don't think it's a creation by the liberal media like me. I've got quite a lot of friends who are there, because I do have friends who aren't left-wing, and family members who are there.
Good on you.
And my understanding is that it's a weird conference. I think that's what most people are saying. Also, it's still got all of the joy that it always has, because a load of people who work together, having drinks, sharing ideas, that's always a great and important thing.
Yeah. And the fringe elements, incredible. You look at that book of the conference, it's 400 pages and 380 pages.
With Michael Gove.
No, 380 pages.
Okay, well, what about Gove, Stanley? Because, come on, you know he has been a snake and he is trying to cause
I am
trouble.
not going to talk about wildlife of any kind. Except, although I did go to a special meeting on Bring Back Beavers. I can tell you, I'm not going to start. Look, I'm actually going to sing Michael Gove's praises because, as far as I'm concerned, he has been a really good Secretary of State for the Environment.
Well, he stabbed your son in the back.
I'm not going to talk about stabbing back or front or whatever. I'm concentrating on things I care about because you introduced me as an environmentalist, and I will say that the mission which Boris's government, if I might call it that, had for the environment, Gove really helped deliver. So, bully for Gove.
In terms of the left-wing media ruining everything, what I would say is that if that had been the agenda, wouldn't have to work very hard. There's a lot of stuff to report on totally neutrally that's not going well. And I think Amanda is absolutely right. All they needed to do was say, we are a party who are capable of saying, we made a decision, it didn't work, we're changing our mind, should have been happening. That's a powerful thing to do.
But final point to you, because I always love doing this.
As you point at me.
You used to obviously be a key advisor to a Tory party leader. So if you were advising Liz Truss ahead of this critical speech tomorrow morning, so you want her to say sorry, what else do you want her to do in the speech?
Oh, I just wish that there was some way that she would have some level of connection, some level of compassion, some level of humanity.
She's got all that.
She hasn't got that. She sounds like, she sounds robotic. I think she's just got to be incredibly confident. I hope she will say sorry for the mistakes. I hope she will say again that I promise you that we will deliver this low-tax agenda and I will not be deterred from that. I hope that's what she says.
I say give the lady a break, and I don't mean a break.
And she's got a much nicer haircut now. She listened to me.
Well, Stanley, I'm actually feeling very sorry for her. I think the dark forces against her are just overwhelming, so I'm with you on
Do not
Stanley.
give up hope.
It's honestly, it's called the glass
hope.
cliff. You bring in a woman when things are all going wrong, and then she's the person in charge when it all goes. I'll explain more about that later. It's an important feminist theory.
Sounds like a Taylor Swift thing. Rebecca Reid, Stanley Johnson, Amanda Patel. Do stand by my superstar panel with me all night. But still to come, with a nurse stated on a national television show that Conservative voters don't need to be resuscitated by the NHS. Has the nastiness of the left finally been exposed? Well, Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie gives his reaction to a slew of Liberal hate soon. But first, after sparking an international row in his downtime from resurrecting a £38 billion Twitter takeover, it's happening, folks, apparently, finally, and I'm all here for it. Is Elon Musk's suggestion that Ukraine should give up land to end war with Russia a valid one? Cormac Smith, former advisor to the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, and social commentator Adrian Hayes do battle in tonight's clash. I'll get your verdict on this too. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle @gbnews. The poll running there too. We're back with the results in just 2 minutes' time.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
US media superstar Megyn Kelly and Calvin McKenzie still to come this hour, but it's time now for The Clash. And breaking tonight, Ukrainian troops have reportedly broken through Russian lines in each of the 4 regions Putin has declared an intention to annex, leading to rare criticism on Russian state television. But while the chances of an unlikely Ukrainian victory are increasing, it hasn't stopped one of the world's richest men from offering his advice by proposing a potential plan for peace. Now, tonight, Elon Musk has had his hands full after resurrecting his £38 billion Twitter takeover in a major victory for free speech. Oh my goodness, I've wanted this to happen for so long. I have a feeling Musk can save this platform. But last night, he actually had plenty of time to post and cause major controversy on the social media site by suggesting a UN-supervised rerun of the contentious elections in the regions claimed to be annexed by Russia. But Musk's proposal was shot down, with 59% of voters rejecting his idea, while Ukraine's ambassador to Germany bluntly told Musk to F off. Now, even President Zelensky got in on the debate with a poll of his own, simply asking whether people prefer an Elon Musk who supports Ukraine or one who supports Russia, with 79% siding with the president. The Kremlin, perhaps unsurprisingly, praised Musk's proposal, saying it is very positive that someone with the profile of the SpaceX billionaire is looking for a peaceful end to this brutal conflict. And with reports that Putin is planning for a nuclear test on Ukraine's border in a sign of possible escalation, is Musk's suggestion that Ukraine give up on land to end the war with Russia actually a valid one for peace? Want to know what you think on this? Proved very controversial over the past 24 hours. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results shortly. But first, to debate this now, I'm joined by the former advisor to Ukraine's Foreign Minister Cormac Smith and the social commentator and author Adrian Hayes. So, Adrian Hayes, you're actually with the new owner of Twitter on this. You think he's making a valid point?
Thanks, Dan. Firstly, I'm very pleased he's taken over Twitter as well.
Oh, my goodness, I know. Hallelujah! Hallelujah!
Let me put a context, and good evening, Cormac, as well, and your viewers.
Good evening.
There's an assumption that military people or ex-military people like myself, as an ex-Gurkha officer, are bellicose and stand up to Putin, all these things. And my view on that is that, you know, choose your battles. I believe in put a context. We were wrong to go in Iraq. We were wrong to go in Afghanistan. We were wrong to to depose Gaddafi. And I think we'd be wrong to be drawn into a protracted war in Ukraine as we are now. And let's be honest, politicians have always used wars for other vested interests, to look strong on the world stage, or to divert attention from domestic problems, which I think is what all these examples show. The thing with Ukraine, and actually, first thing, I'm just amazed that nobody has called for peace talks up until now, until Elon Musk has said it last night. And this comes to my whole thing. You know, what exactly? And I'm an objective-driven guy in my coaching work and everything like this, and I see it everything. What exactly are we trying to achieve in Ukraine? Now, if people say it's to stop Putin invading other countries in Western Europe, whatever, let me just show, to prove I'm not a weed-smoking pacifist putting drums around thing, I would say, if clear warnings to Putin, if he invades any Baltic states or Poland, it's all-out war. And I would say the same to China if it was an invasion of Taiwan. So I'm not a pacifist. But what are we trying to achieve in Ukraine? Because if the objective is to defeat Vladimir Putin, I think we're on a hiding to nothing. He will never be defeated by military force. I'm so pleased with anything else that Zelensky in Ukraine is fighting back, but I just don't think he can be defeated. The only people who can defeat Putin is his own people.
Cormac, you say that Musk is a useful idiot at best as a result of this suggestion.
Dan, good evening, and Adrian, good evening. Yes, I said he's a useful idiot at best and a Kremlin asset at worst. I actually go for a useful idiot who's driven by his own ego. Look, his suggestions of yesterday on Twitter have been as obnoxious as they were ludicrous. To suggest that Ukraine... Oh, and by the way, Adrian, you were wrong. There were peace talks brokered by Turkey very, very shortly after the outbreak of this war, which the Ukrainian delegation were led by Dmytro Kuleba, the foreign minister, and the Russian delegation were led by Sergei Lavrov. Memorably, they ended, I know because I went on Sky to be interviewed about them at the time. Sorry, it was Channel 5. But memorably, they broke up with nothing achieved. Memorably, in the Turkish ones, which were the second set, Lavrov came out and denied that Russia was even in Ukraine. This is a country that lies on an industrial scale as part of its hybrid war toolkit. To go back to what we're trying to achieve in Ukraine, this is the most diabolical act of aggression against a peaceful, democratic country on European soil since 1939 to 1945. Putin and his cronies have made it very clear that they do not think Ukraine has the right to exist. They are carrying out, and it has been recognized by numerous countries, they are carrying out genocide on the Ukrainian people. Whole cities have been wiped off the face of the earth. They are raping not just women, but children and babies. And they are doing this on a systematic basis, not just the rare actions of ill-disciplined troops. So, you know, there's
okay, Cormac, I understand that. Cormac, can I just cut in and ask you a question quickly? Because a lot of people have huge sympathy for what you're saying. But the problem is, Cormac, and you will have looked at the polls here in the UK that show an increasing number of Brits are worried about the economic consequences to a never-ending war. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of end game in sight.
Well, actually, you're wrong there. There is an end game in sight, and the Ukrainians are currently making huge progress. It's quite simple. If we stand by Ukraine, if we double down on the armaments, where we have a long way to go, we're still not giving them all the heavy armaments that they need, and if we double down on the sanctions, which are affecting them, but a good friend of mine, Alexei Mikheyev, has been for the last 7 months their special representative on sanctions. There is a lot more we can do there. The third thing, of course, we have to do in the West is not be cowed by Putin's ridiculous nuclear threats. I want to. There clearly is an end game. We clearly can. This war can be won by the Ukrainians. And in fact, if I can finish off, Dan, to say it must be won by the Ukrainians, again, to quote a good friend of mine, Oleksiy, he said, if Russia stops fighting, there is no war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there is no Ukraine. We have seen the evidence of genocide which is being carried
Very
out.
powerfully put, Cormac.
We have both a moral and and it's in our own interest to make sure that Putin is stopped in Ukraine.
Cormac, absolutely understand where you're coming from. So, Adrian, how do you respond to that?
Well, look, I wouldn't dispute anything that Cormac says about Russian aggression and the evilness of what they've done. But we got it wrong at the beginning. I mean, one of the military principles is surprise. Russia was building up its forces on the border for weeks and weeks and months. And I don't personally think that he had made his mind up to invade. He was just testing the waters. And it was Biden's tacit that a limited incursion would be accepted that I think gave him the green light. So we've got a problem there that we caused this from our own making to a degree. Please don't jump in. But the other thing, and Cormac, you know, the problem with them, one of the reasons why I believe Russia went in is because of the Russian-speaking majority in the eastern part of Ukraine, the Donbass. He knows he's got that popular support there. And what Musk is proposing, a UN rerun of that referendum to see what people would want in there. I just say, to me, it's the only way out of this. And just to say, finally, you know, Zelensky has been a fantastic leader. He has been the best leader we've seen in the Western world for quite some years. But leadership is about reading the room and being aware of when you've got to be flexible, when you may have to change. And look, there's no single objective. This is what we got. Everything's a trade-off. And you know, F.W. de Klerk saw it in South Africa. Mikhail Gorbachev saw it in the Soviet Union. They recognized that the end game was up. And I think Zelensky could go down as an absolute hero if he's prepared to just compromise on this standoff. And it will help the whole world.
OK, thank you so much. That is the social commentator Adrian Hayes, and before that, the former advisor to Ukraine's Foreign Minister Cormac Smith. So who do you agree with? Is Elon Musk suggesting that Ukraine should give up land to end the war with Russia? Is that a valid one? From Daniel via Twitter. Russia are currently having their backsides handed to them in the south and northeast. Why would Ukraine negotiate a settlement when they are on the road to victory? From Alice via email. Elon is right, of course, enough blood has been spilled. As your regular panellist Dominique Samuel says, it will end up being a diplomatic solution in the end anyway. But from Alan on email, no, Ukraine should not give up land and reward the aggressor. You must be joking. And your verdict is now in. 40% of you agree with Elon Musk's peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, while 60% of you say he is totally wrong. Coming up, as Donald Trump launches a £416 million lawsuit against CNN for comparisons to Hitler, should the mainstream media be afraid of the revenge of the Donald? US superstar journalist and top legal expert Megyn Kelly analyses that at 9:50. But next, with a nurse, I still can't believe this, a nurse telling Jeremy Vine that Conservative voters don't need to be resuscitated on the NHS. Has the nastiness of the left finally been exposed? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie reacts to an outpouring of liberal hate in The Outsider in just 2 minutes' time.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie is tonight's outsider. Now, while the famous phrase, first do no harm, is one of the earliest lessons taught in medical school, one particular nurse stunned the nation last night with a shocking outburst on national television. You wouldn't have seen it live, I hope, because the programme was on Channel 5 and hosted by Jeremy Vine. But here's the clip.
Miranda, you were a nurse, correct?
I was.
But I hear it sort of broke you.
I could not handle the emotional stress of not being able to deliver for my patients. If you are there to do a job as a compassionate person, there are no resources, and you are told persistently on the news that, you know, care homes are being ring-fenced. It's a lie, and I'm sorry, but if you have voted Conservative, you do not deserve to be resuscitated by the NHS.
Hang on.
That is a woman called Miranda Hughes. Certainly don't want to be treated by her. Imagine if that had been a right-leaning medical professional who claimed Labour voters should be left to die. It would have been leading the MSM news all day. And that shocking moment on live television comes hot on the heels of bullying and intimidation by raging lefties at the Tory party conference in Birmingham, with the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg and Michael Fabricant waded through crowds of vicious Labour supporters getting in their faces. By the way, we asked the Nursing and Midwifery Council for their comments on the nurses' views. They said, we've seen a lot of tweets about a comment made yesterday on television. Our code is clear that professionals on our register must promote professionalism and trust at all times. Where concerns are raised with us, we'll always look into it and consider taking action if needed. Calvin Mackenzie, I mean, this was just an absolutely stunning and shocking moment, wasn't it? Because this nurse, Miranda Hughes, had no idea that actually saying as a fact that she doesn't believe Tories should be resuscitated by the NHS, she had no idea that that was even a slightly controversial thing to say. They are so far down their own rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that is the reality of the NHS and the nursing and medical profession. The truth about the matter is they all want to go on strike currently. Just leave it about a couple of weeks and you'll be announcing nurses are out, doctors are out, the whole thing's out. Actually, the good news about it all is that actually it's starting to reveal how they really feel about us, right? We're a pain in the backside. We're called patients. Actually, they'd rather not have an NHS. Me, I agree with them. I absolutely agree with them. It is time we started pulling the thing apart. Did you realise that 40p in the pound, as of the end of 2024, of all government spending goes on the NHS? Right? Why?
But it's still not enough for them, Calvin. It's not enough. It's not going to be enough until it's 75p in a pound.
Yeah, it's 100p. The whole lot's gone. That lady would not be a surprise within her own nursing fraternity. And the other aspect is she's an ex-nurse. However, if we had another COVID outbreak, she would be one of those that would be going up to the front allegedly to treat you. So you're lying there on your last legs and somebody said, well, are you a socialist? All right, well, we'll treat you. Are you a Tory? You're out. And the funny thing about this is, without the Tories, i.e. the wealth creators of this country, there wouldn't be a national health service anywhere. Nobody could afford it. She actually reveals what I suspect is the total truth within the NHS. They actually dislike Conservatives. What an incredible state that we have arrived in. I mean, the truth about the matter is we haven't got any money. So that point that Suella has been making all day today is that we are we are actually a people made up of benefits. We are a benefit country. And this is part of the reason the NHS creates such a row all the time is not because the Conservatives, who probably would prefer to have an insurance-based tax allowable system, the reason we've got it is because a lot of very, very poor people are saying, well, this is fantastic. Every time we have a cough, we'll go down there and we'll queue up and we'll be part of thousands of people waiting for some kind of treatment. The NHS is a socialist idea. It doesn't work. 70 odd years ago, great idea. After the war, nobody had any money at all. We didn't have any food. We didn't have any health. We didn't have any medical. Boom. Today, it is different. But the truth is that woman was revealing what inside the NHS they really feel. If anybody knows anybody in that background, I'd be grateful if they come on your show and just say, do you know, funnily enough, my neighbour said, or my sister said, or my brother said, they will all say the same thing. This is a Labour idea. And when it looks like, great news for GB News, by the way, your ratings will go off the dial. When Labour get elected in 2024, right, that will be where the rest of the money goes. So your analysis, yeah, it moves to 70p in the pound. Labour will be cheering them home. Why? Because it is their voters who are unfit, don't look after themselves, on the piss all day long. I'm joking with you. But the truth about the matter is it is a nationalised idea that doesn't work like most nationalised ideas don't work.
I mean, Calvin, when I heard the comment earlier this morning, I was genuinely dumbfounded by it. It actually reminded me of Ronald Reagan after his assassination attempt in the early 80s, when he joked that he hoped the surgeon who was about to remove the bullet was a Republican. And of course, that was a wry joke back in the 1980s. But actually, what's so shocking, when it comes to the NHS in Britain in 2022, if you were a Conservative, a well-known Conservative going into hospital, you would actually be thinking, my goodness, I hope it's not a Labour nurse or doctor treating me.
Okay, yeah, I agree. That was a game. But look what's happened at the Birmingham conference, the Birmingham Conservative Conference. After all, the Conservatives themselves haven't been helping themselves. But the idea that either delegates, cabinet ministers, MPs or the like are being abused and literally heckled and rushed at. And when the police were asked, the police commander, I quote from that, I think from the Times this morning, the West Midlands police commander, the Gold Commander in charge of security, was asked, well, can we have a safe space for these people? And everybody would want a safe space. You'd want a safe space. I would. Anybody would, right? But he said, no, this is not Belarus. To be truthful, I think we're very grateful it's not Belarus, because anybody who had protested like that would have got a bullet in their head. Right? This is Birmingham. People are entitled to protection no matter who they are, whether Labour, Conservative, it has no interest.
But Calvin, a Tory MP yesterday said that they had actually seen the police laughing when the protesters were acting in a violent manner towards Tory MPs, including, by the way, Michael Fabricant, who was actually physically pushed by one of them.
Yeah. Well, this is the case. Unfortunately, what we have, and at the bottom level, I don't blame the police, really. I mean, they've got a nightmare of a job anyway, right? Having to deal with scum by and large, generally. Right? But at the bottom level, it's a bit like the NHS. It's a bit like all state industries. The truth about the matter is that they don't like Conservatives, and they certainly don't like successful Conservatives. So the medical view is, I hope that I very much hope that the Tory patient dies or doesn't get resuscitation, right? And the police force, they sit there and kind of laugh if they saw the Home Secretary or somebody similar under the cosh from really hate-filled lefties. Now, if you ask your colleague, Nigel Farage, what that is like, he will be able to identify for you the real fear. Now, if you take Rees-Mogg managed, I don't know how he did it, to kind of laugh it off. You ask Nigel, who has to put up with this morning, noon and night. Somebody like Nigel Farage can't even go into the pub for a pint without a couple of people coming over, oh, you're Nigel Farage, are you? And looning right into your face. That cannot be right. People are entitled to their safe space. And if you are starved...
And just imagine, Calvin, just imagine if this was happening to left-wing politicians. Just imagine. It would be a biggest national outcry. It would be leading the BBC News. They haven't reported on it a peep.
They don't care. They don't care. But this is why GB News and the like, going forward, will represent a larger and larger minority of the way people think. People of a certain political view cannot get broadcasting space in this country. You're quite right. If this were happening to the lady who currently considers herself the deputy leader of the Labour Party, can you imagine? Misogyny of the right.
Totally. It would be considered terrorism, wouldn't it? No, you're completely right.
Can you just imagine what the left, what the right...
And that's the hypocrisy of it, Calvin. But we will keep covering it. Calvin McKenzie, Fleet Street legend. Thank you so much, Calvin. But coming up, as Suella Braverman pledges to tighten immigration rules by banning anyone who crosses the channel from claiming asylum, will the Home Secretary finally end the illegal migrant crisis and save the Tories? My Superstar panel returns to debate that in the Media Buzz at 10. But first, as Trump launches a £416 million lawsuit against CNN for comparisons to Hitler, will he be able to win his war against the mainstream media? US superstar journalist and legal expert Megyn Kelly joins me live stateside straight after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's Megyn Kelly time now, and never one to shy away from a fight. Former US President Donald Trump has launched a massive £416 million lawsuit against lefty MSM mouthpiece CNN for comparisons to Hitler and Nazism. Trump filed the suit in a district court in southern Florida by citing various times since 2018 that the woke channel had defamed him by linking him to the German dictator, Chairman Mao, Russian corruption, and even leading a cult.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century. He may be responsible for many more million deaths than they were.
You can draw that line between a cult leader and the attributes of a cult leader and the attributes of a authoritarian leadership like Donald Trump.
More of the same from Donald Trump and this administration, who sow the seeds of division, and I can't even characterize that as a dog whistle. It's so far beyond that.
Oh yeah, it's him sowing the seeds of division, yeah. Taking to his Truth Social platform to announce the case, Trump said CNN waged years of libel and slander against him, but ramped up its recent attacks because it fears he'll run again for the top job in 2024. He said it was finally time to hold, quote, fake news CNN responsible for its behaviour. But Megyn Kelly, it is notoriously difficult to win a defamation case in the US, especially compared to here in the UK, notably because of the First Amendment upholding free speech and the freedom of the press. So is he pursuing this case because he genuinely thinks he will win, or is it to make a political point against CNN?
It's the latter. There's not a lawyer, not a serious lawyer in America who would say, without some massive U.S. precedent being overturned, that Trump could win this case. We do have the First Amendment here, and we have a lengthy history of Supreme Court precedent saying you cannot win a defamation case if you are a public figure unless you can prove that the person printed lies about you with actual malice, like in their heart, understanding that it was false or having a reckless disregard for it being false. So this is why very few public figures ever bring a defamation lawsuit, because most people can pass through this standard in hurling accusations against a public figure. But I'll tell you, Dan, the most important speech, the speech to protect more than any other kind of speech in this country, is speech about a public concern, a matter of government, speech about a president. And there's no chance that the Supreme Court is going to say, oh, I think Donald Trump is like Hitler, is anything other than a protected statement of opinion. That's a separate lane of defense for anybody. You can say it wasn't true, or I didn't know it wasn't true, or I didn't say it with actual malice. Or you can just say, that's my opinion. I think he's like Hitler. And you can skate. So he is going to lose the case unless they overturn New York Times versus Sullivan, which is the seminal case on the First Amendment jurisprudence. And I think Trump's lawyers know that. He's trying to make a point. He's trying to get you and yours truly and others to run the sound bites that we just ran to show people how extreme these people are.
Well, I was going to say, Megyn, can you just explain to me what the hell happened to CNN? What has gone on? Because it's become so extreme.
I can tell you exactly what happened to CNN because I watched it happen and I know a lot of the people there and I experienced it. Trump basically caused Jeff Zucker, who was running CNN for the past 15 years, to lose his mind. Jeff Zucker worked with Trump in launching The Apprentice, the show that made Trump rich. And they used to be, in simpatico with one another. They were making each other rich. They were making each other stars at their respective organizations. And then Trump ran for president, and Jeff Zucker, who rode Trump to record ratings in the beginning of his campaign and loved doing so, thinking he was a joke, had a very different opinion once Trump actually won. And Trump kept picking on Jeff Zucker because he didn't like their increasingly anti-Trump coverage. And Jeff Zucker, rather than taking the high road and remembering that he was a television executive, not a schoolboy being bullied on the 8th grade playground, took the bait. And he turned all of his anchors who were previously respected, maybe not the most respected, but respected as somewhat neutral, actively against the sitting president of the United States. They were open about their agenda. They not just hated him, they hated the right half of the country and were very explicit about how they thought that anybody who voted for Donald Trump was a racist. That appeared over and over on their statements. They don't think just Trump is Hitler. They think his followers are Hitler lovers. And the right half of the country and anybody in the middle just tuned out in droves. Now he's gone. They have a new management in. They have a new ownership in. And the directive is try to steady the ship. Put your hands on 10 and 2 again. Stop. It's too late. It's too late.
Well, yeah, but also, Megyn, they are still obsessed. They are still obsessed with the man. Anytime I'm flicking through the channels after my show, right, at night, which is prime time in America, Every single day they have a headline on Trump up on screen. They're not talking about the fact that their current serving president is quite clearly dementia-plagued.
Oh, well, they don't want to talk about that. But I think that's ratings driven. Right now, it's ratings driven. Of course, if you're going to talk about Trump and you're on CNN, it will be negative. They cannot course correct on that. They hate him too much, too deeply, and they've already telegraphed it. So, I mean, to be honest, how would they possibly do a 180 on him? It's like Chris Cuomo left the network and joined another network and is trying to do that now. And that's even more false than the ones who are still at CNN just owning their hatred of the guy. But they want to keep talking about Donald Trump for two reasons. Number one, he rates. You put him on TV, you put on a rally, you put on a Q&A, you put on a rant. It rates. Trump is highly entertaining. He is a ratings machine. They all know that. But secondly, the midterm elections are a month away. And the more focus on Trump, the lower the Republicans' numbers are going. So CNN, while it may have a different direction from up above, its anchors, its producers are as left as they come. And there's only so much moderating they're willing to do.
Fascinating analysis, as ever, from Megyn Kelly, top US journalist, host of The Megyn Kelly Show, which, let me tell you, is available on Sirius XM in the US, as well as on YouTube and as a podcast internationally. Thank you, Megyn.
Thanks, Dan. Good to see you.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, once again, the Tory party has shown itself to be rife with traitors, and they've already got a weakened Liz Truss in their sights.
But it's possible that you could change leader again if she does badly.
Look, of course, anything is possible. Anything is possible.
With a government civil war brewing over benefits, were the Tories wrong to depose Boris Johnson? Well, I've got the perfect superstar panel for this debate. Former MEP, father to Boris himself, Sandy Johnson, top Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid will debate that at 10:30. But could it be Suella Braverman who saves the Tory party at the polls with her radical plans to curb illegal immigration?
If you deliberately enter the United Kingdom illegally from a safe country, you should be swiftly returned to your home country or relocated to Rwanda.
As she bids to ban anyone crossing the channel from claiming asylum, do we finally have a Home Secretary who can tackle the migrant crisis? That's coming up next. As Meghan revives her Spotify podcast after Her Late Majesty the Queen's death with a shocking story about being naked in a spa as a teenager.
It's a very humbling experience for a girl going through puberty because you enter a room with women from ages 9 to maybe 90, all walking around naked.
So is her undignified approach to royal life why she's been unseated by Kate as America's Queen Bee? Top Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Warden breaks down the Duchess's fall from grace in the royal rankings and the US live at 10:20+. I'll meet the widow and children's author reduced to driving a truck simply for standing with J.K. Rowling. Gillian Phillip will finally be uncancelled on that at 10:40. And how did the BBC react when Conservative MP Lee Anderson made this suggestion for how to boost the economy?
I'll tell you where I'd start. If we want to subsidise wages at the moment, let's start with the BBC. I think you're lot raking about £5 billion a year in. You've got Lineker earning £2 million. You've got other presenters earning millions of pounds.
Oh, what a surprise that they tried to cut him off at that moment. That plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and much more coming up in the Media Buzz throughout the next hour. And how would you feel if this woman was your nurse?
I'm sorry, but if you have voted Conservative, you do not deserve to be resuscitated by the NHS.
Hang on. I'm still startled, and that shocking example of lefty hate. It's got to be a front runner for tonight's Union Jackass. I crown the next GB and UJ at 10:50, so stay up with us tonight. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dan. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. In a GB News exclusive, the Chancellor has told us an announcement detailing his medium-term fiscal plan will not be brought forward and will be delivered as planned on the 23rd of November. Kwasi Kwarteng has been under pressure to give more details of how he'll reduce the country's debt. It follows market turmoil, which saw sterling plummet after the mini-budget was announced 11 days ago. The Chancellor says fiscal decisions were made during a very difficult period.
It was a very quick time that we did it.
And also you've got to remember the context. I mean, what was extraordinary about that month was that we had a new government, and also we had the sad passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So we had a nation in mourning. And then literally, I think 4 days after the funeral, we had the mini budget. It was high speed, high pressure environment. And we could have got, as David Cameron used to say, prepared the pitch a bit better.
Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says she's written to Kwasi Kwarteng demanding greater transparency.
This coming Friday, when the Office of Budget Responsibility gives the government their forecast, the public should see it as well, and financial markets need to see it. The volatility that we've had in the last week and a half, with a huge spike in borrowing costs for government and also for families through mortgage rates, is causing huge anxiety. And government now need to get a grip, publish those forecasts. If they've got nothing to hide, what is stopping them?
The Home Secretary has imposed a blanket ban on anyone entering the UK illegally from seeking refuge. Suella Braverman has used her conference speech to announce the government's latest attempt to curb the growing number of people arriving on UK shores. Under new plans, migrants crossing the Channel will be banned from claiming asylum in Britain. It's as the latest figures show that more than 33,500 migrants have arrived so far this year.
It's not racist for anyone, ethnic minority or otherwise, to want to control our borders. It's not bigoted to say that we have too many asylum seekers who are abusing the system. It's not xenophobic to say that mass and rapid migration places pressure on housing, public services and community relations. I reject the left's argument that it is hypocritical for someone from an ethnic minority to tell these truths.
And Elon Musk has offered to buy Twitter for a second time. The social media giant confirmed it plans to accept the billionaire's offer of £38.3 billion. That's the same price agreed with Mr. Musk earlier on this year. The SpaceX founder pulled out of that deal in July, citing the number of fake or spam accounts on the platform. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now on Our Media Buzz. The first front pages have just been delivered hot off the press, and the Independent leads with the PM's fight to keep the cabinet in line, and that unbelievable admission from Grant Shapps, we're going to be talking about it much more soon, that Liz Truss has just 10 days to save her premiership. Can she fix it? Reads the front page of the Metro next to a picture of the PM as they report that the Tories are in meltdown. She was having fun this morning. Good on her, she deserves that. And tomorrow's Eye warns of Tory open warfare. According to the paper, Truss is in peril after an extraordinary day of infighting at the conference, with one minister issuing this chilling warning: "We've been here before, we might have to do it again." How deluded are they? It's just a game to them. Just a game to them. Absolutely ridiculous. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Patel, the conservationist and former MEP Stanley Johnson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, Suella Braverman has pledged to end the illegal migrant crisis and stop small boat crossings the Channel. As she delivered the speech of the Tory conference so far, I thought she was absolutely brilliant today. She was given 2 standing ovations after promising to finally end the abuse of Britain's asylum system and immediately deport anyone who uses illegal routes to enter the country. Watch.
We'll look to bring forward legislation to make it clear that the only route to the United Kingdom is through a safe and legal route. So if you deliberately enter the United Kingdom illegally from a safe country, you should be swiftly returned to your home country or relocated to Rwanda. There are many forces working against us. The Guardian will have a meltdown. As for the lawyers, don't get me started on the lawyers. The time for words is over. Now is the time for action.
Now, I do appreciate it is early days and she's got a monumental task ahead of her, but she's certainly striking all the right notes. Earlier, Liz Truss told GB News that she shared her Home Secretary's determination to get to grips with the illegal migrant crisis and make the Rwanda policy work.
I'm determined that we get to grips with what's been happening with small boats. These appalling people traffickers are causing huge human misery, and we need to get to grips with it. And I do want to look at more deals beyond Rwanda. I also want to make the Rwanda policy work by making sure we can control our own laws and we can't be overruled by the ECHR.
So if Suala delivers on the promise to stop the boats, could that actually be the ticket to victory for the Tory party at the ballot box? I mean, Amanda Patel, I think the most important thing she said in her entire speech, actually, is that the time for words is over. Because with Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, look, she said all the right things, but the boats are still coming in record numbers. So why is Suala going to be different?
Because she's the former Attorney General, because she's got a legal background. And forgive me, because I was not thinking about talking about this, but she was the one who got through the new ruling from the High Court that the criminal damage of the statue in Bristol was in fact criminal damage. That was all her work. You know, you can protest, you can do whatever you want, shout and scream, but the moment you start damaging things, that was her. So she's a very clever woman with a legal background. Her speech today, honestly, I watched the whole lot of it, and she could hardly open her mouth without them all getting up on their feet and clapping.
It was a speech to the conference.
It was like...
I loved it.
It was just incredible.
Loved it.
And the killer line, or the best line, some might say, but The Guardian have already come out saying how horrendous, was her saying, "I dream of the first flight leaving for Rwanda." And she is incredibly astute. The only thing that she has, pardon me, over her predecessors is the fact that she's got a legal background. She has already talked about changing our relationship with the European Court of
Well, that's the key thing.
You've got to get rid of that, and she understands that, and I think she's going to do it.
Stanley, it's the key thing. We've got to leave the ECHR, Stanley.
That is just out of the question.
Why?
I cannot imagine.
Why?
I cannot imagine us leaving the ECHR, because that is an organisation, that is an institution belonging to the Council of Europe. We desperately need, as a country, to still stay members of the Council of Europe. This is a geometry we cannot afford to do without. Honestly,
We've left the EU now.
The Council of Europe is not the same as the EU. The Council of Europe is 50 countries. The European Convention on Human Rights does great work. It is tremendously important. Now, the point is, though, not the leaving of the European Convention on Human Rights. No, the point is to insist that the definition of asylum seekers are genuine asylum seekers. If you look at the immigration now, a large part of the immigration are coming from Albania. Nobody is suggesting that Albania is not a safe country.
No.
Do you see what I mean? So we have to, that is what we have to tie down. It's not related to the UN, the ECHR at all. It's related to the fact that people are not being dealt with in the way they should be dealt with on the basis of the actual laws which we have relating to the international conventions. And the Albanians, to be fair, are simply abusing that.
Rebecca Reed, this was the sort of speech today that I imagine makes someone like you just curl up in horror. It was aimed at the base, it was proper red meat, it was brilliant, I was cheering along, and I can just imagine you Guardian readers being utterly fuming, which I love, by the way.
I wasn't fuming, I just thought, what a sad little life if your dream is to see a plane go to Rwanda. Like, of all the dreams you could have...
Well, no, we need to take back control of our borders.
In my dream, I'm best friends with Reese Witherspoon, and we share a pool. Like, that's a fun dream.
And you leave your husband for Taylor Swift.
100%.
Oh, no, but he's not a bloke, is he? Sorry, I take that back. I'm going to stop here.
I would still leave my husband for Taylor Swift if that was an option. But no, I was just a bit sad that's her whole dream. I'm sorry to say, I think if any Tories are wetting their pants over this, they're idiots, because this is the same stuff Priti Patel said for the entire time she was in charge. This is the same stuff they all say. Oh, no more boats, no more immigrants, get rid of all those horrid immigrants. They all say it. None of them done anything about it.
But Amanda Suala's different.
She's completely
she's
different.
Someone who delivers, and her track record in government is one of delivery.
It is, and I do not like the description of wetting my pants. Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Sorry.
Stanley.
But it excites me enormously.
By the way, Rwanda, it's not meant to be. I know Rwanda fairly well because I'm still the president of the guerrilla organisation. A lot of the guerrillas are in the Virungas and so on, the Rwanda part. Now, but the point I'm getting at is Rwanda is only meant to be a deterrent. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not.
Yes, but the flights have to leave for it to become a deterrent.
Yeah, exactly. That has to happen. But once it does, you have the first lady. And once it's established that, yes, Rwanda is a possibility, the idea is then people will no longer come because they'll know.
Which is what happened in Australia.
Well, also, if
and the
it's
boat
nice and it's
ended
safe-
virtually overnight.
But if Rwanda is nice and safe and well maintained, then that is better than any situation you're in that's dangerous. And I'm not inherently against it, because Rwanda's a very beautiful country, if it's going to be well maintained. And I know that in the Australian system, where they're detained is not always a particularly nice or safe place to be, and that doesn't seem fair either.
Okay. So you get a better deal if you're an illegal immigrant into Britain.
Well, at the moment, there's one thing Miss Braverman didn't deal with, and that is the concept of, do we have a view as actually how many people we want in this country? When I first started thinking about population, the population of this
she thinks immigration needs to come down, and she's been clear about that.
It does,
and at loggerheads with Liz.
But we nearly also need to have a view that we don't actually want to see the continued explosion of the population, which we have seen in England. 20 million have happened since in the last 40 years.
We can't afford it, Rebecca.
Exactly, we have got a disastrous ageing population, so we actually
Do you just want open
need...
borders?
We certainly don't.
She's talking about us, Stanley.
No.
God, the left can be really mean.
The nasty left again, ageist too. But you just want open borders. Just be honest about it.
I am an anti-Asian campaigner. You know I don't believe in borders. I think there should be no borders.
I know,
no belief.
exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I know, but that's what I'm saying. Just be honest about it.
I don't think I have any
You
more
don't
right-
want borders. You want anyone to be able to come at any time.
Because why do I have any more right to live in a nice village in leafy Hampshire
I think you're delusional.
than anybody who is born in Albania? What gives me the right?
I think you're being completely
But why am I special and different and they're
delusional.
not?
Because we are Britain, we are the UK, and we have to protect our country first.
But
That is the
what
responsibility
What
of
did
the
any of
government.
us do to earn that?
Well, so what? You want a world?
Well,
government?
actually,
you want the
to be
World
born
Economic
here.
Forum.
He and me did
Well,
because we came in through the front door. We're foreigners.
Okay,
Well,
well,
I'm actually a
Dan-
British
Dan's
citizen,
British.
Amanda.
Oh, are you? I'm sorry. Well,
so
And
that was
Dan,
actually
Dan
highly
does not
racist.
like it. Dan doesn't like it when you say that he's not British. I've
I
done the same thing.
No, darling, you are British. I think that my mum's...
I've had a British passport
But
since the day
Amanda,
I was
you are better.
I wrote a piece.
Final words, Stanley. Final words.
I did it completely legally.
Final word to
I
Stan.
do come back to my point. I wrote a piece for Conservative Home saying why Britain needs a population policy. And I can remember way back in 1969 going to a very well-organised conference which said, actually, we cannot afford to have this population explosion, which we've had in Britain.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more, and this has to be a discussion.
But you would have let me.
Then what do you do about the fact that we have an ageing population and there are not enough babies being
Encourage people to have kids.
You have fewer children, actually, because then your carbon footprint is totally reduced.
Yeah, that's the Harry and Meghan verdict on it, isn't it? Now, the Tory party conference has brought out the worst in the Craven MSM as they set about undemocratically deposing another PM. Just look at this performance. I couldn't believe it, actually, from SNP TVs, that's what I call them, Catherine Sampson, I think she's from STV, as she proudly exposed her bias during an interview with Liz Truss.
Prime Minister, do you enjoy chaos?
Well, I don't know what your question is getting at. Why don't you be more specific?
Do you think for many Scottish voters, the first few weeks of your time in office has felt chaotic, has felt like you don't have a plan, that you're out of control in some way?
Well, we have a very clear plan. We understand that families across the country are struggling.
But you're not ruling out a benefits freeze for the poorest. And that's the right thing. Yourself as a child of the Union, we know you spent time in Paisley as a child.
I did. In the 1980s. And I know what living in a place that has low economic growth and no prospects looks like. So
your plan will also make Scots poorer, won't it? That's the problem here. So it's not going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer.
Absolutely not.
Very briefly, would Paisley be proud to be associated with your policies at the moment?
Well, I'm proud to have lived in Paisley and I hope they're proud of me.
Prime Minister.
Good on you for saying that, Liz. They don't even try and hide it anymore, do they? Do you know what I think she has to stop? She's got to stop this farce of having interviews with women like that, very biased women like Beth Rigby from Sly News.
You just don't do it.
Don't do it.
She has a complete choice as to who she wants to be interviewed by.
Ridiculous. If you are supposed to be the cleverest person in the country, which the Prime Minister should be, you should be able to...
That's a partisan hit job, Rebecca. She has been
If you are good enough at your job, if you are good enough at your job, you could get through an interview with Beth Rigby or her.
It's not an interview, though.
I could,
it's
you
pointless.
could, Amanda could,
Stanley, it's pointless.
Any of us could get through that
On a
interview.
point of order, no, point of information, I don't think the Prime Minister is required to be the most intelligent person in the country. I don't think that's part of the job description. He or she has to be sensible. sensible. He needs to know how to run things. He needn't be a kind of super brain.
And also, I'm sorry, they have better things to do than sit there and be hectored and lectured to by highly partisan operatives, which is exactly what Beth Rigby is and what that woman is. Just don't do it.
And I have to say, Stanley, even your beloved son, Boris, when he was Prime Minister, he would only go on the BBC when he absolutely had to.
Yeah, although
he would do
I knew a lot of people close to Boris would say, don't do those interviews with Beth Rigby of Sly News, and then he still did them, and I think that was a big mistake.
Well, I've got to say, I very seldom get involved in this sort of discussion, but I was shocked when Nick Robinson was very rude on the Today program.
Yes, he was.
I didn't think that was the right thing to say.
He was completely...
It wasn't an interview.
And it was
he was hectoring her.
But
he was
salivating.
salivating.
If you were interviewing Keir Starmer, you wouldn't hector?
No. Have you seen my interviews, Rebecca?
Yes.
And I let people speak, always.
Yes.
Always.
And then,
including you.
And then have the last word before the break.
Well done, Rebecca.
By the way, at the Tory Party conference, Lee Anderson gave the British Bashing Corporation, otherwise known as the BBC, more than they bargained for. I loved this. He turned their unbalanced questions about benefits back on their own incredibly overpaid presenters, and they were horrified. Watch.
Now, we need to move away from universal credit in this country, upskill our workforce and make sure we've got a work environment where people can earn higher wages without getting a handout from the government. And I'll tell you where I'd start. If we want to subsidise wages at the moment, let's start with the BBC. I think you're lot raking about £5 billion a year in. You've got Lineker earning £2 million. You've got other presenters earning millions of pounds. Let's scrap the BBC licence. That's £160 a year that can go back into people's pockets.
Okay,
let's give them a pay rise with the BBC licence.
I'm not sure we're talking about the BBC's wages at the moment.
That's how it's done, Liz.
But at least he can handle himself in an interview. That's what Liz Truss should
The
have been
BBC
doing.
were wrapping it up faster than you could say 3, 2, 1, as I'm going to wrap you up now, Rebecca Reid, Stanley John, sort of handle it down. Thank you so much. Only because we've got to get to the ad break, though, not because you've been
you like to have
censored.
the last
You're never
word, Dan.
censored here, Rebecca Reid. You're never censored here. Now, coming up with the PM on the ropes and a government civil war brewing over benefits. Were the Conservatives wrong to depose Boris Johnson? I'll put that as the Superstar panel return in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Also, we'll find out how more of tomorrow's newspapers are covering the Tory unrest. But first, is Meghan's undignified approach to royal life the reason why she's been unseated by Kate as America's Queen Bee? Well, Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden breaks down the Duchess's fall from grace in the royal rankings in just a few moments' time.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. After the blessed relief, I have to be honest, of not having Meghan Markle's damn podcast shoved down our throat every week, the American Woke Fest made its unwelcome return to Spotify today. And despite desperately claiming that she wants to protect her privacy, you know, the show kicked off with Meghan sharing yet more intimate and personal details about herself that we never actually asked for.
But more than that, I had a real love of getting to know other cultures. And part of that, my mom and we would often go to the Korean spa together. Now, for those of you who haven't been to one before, it's a very humbling experience for a girl going through puberty because you enter a room with women from ages 9 to maybe 90, all walking around naked and waiting to get a body scrub on one of these tables that are all lined up in a row. All I wanted was a bathing suit.
Podcast revival continues Meghan's undignified attempt to rub shoulders with Hollywood A-listers. But Star Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Wootton is forecasting that the Prince and Princess of Wales tour of the States later this year will actually cement Kate's position as America's favourite Duchess. Celia says that her own conversations with the ordinary Americans shows there is a distinct lack of popularity for the Sussexes, and as such, the US crown is William and Kate's for the taking. And I'm delighted to say that Celia joins me now. I mean, Celia, great to see you, by the way. I think this is just a case of diminishing returns for Meghan, isn't it? Because every week now we're getting private detail after private detail served up on a platter. And actually, it's just made her like any other Hollywood D-lister rather than a royal who has an air and a mystique around them.
Well, that's exactly it. What I think she's done, inadvertently, obviously, is she's discounted herself from every area she sort of wanted to be in, really. So you can't be an A-lister and air your dirty laundry. If you look at all our A-listers or America's A-listers, you know, you don't hear about Beyonce's sort of marriage or any of her family issues. You don't have George and Amal talking about what's going on in their private lives. So she discounted herself from being an A-lister the second she started doing that. And she has obviously discounted herself from being a part of the royal family. So the question now is, well, what are you? And you know, obviously they're trying to sort of start this new, whole new side of them with the Netflix deals and the Archetypes podcast. But I think if they're not delivering what people want, then they sort of fundamentally, the pair of them, become slightly useless, don't they?
Well, indeed. And the thing is, it's not even like she's a good interviewer. I mean, she's certainly no Oprah Winfrey. I find it an absolute cringe fest. Whereas actually, do you think Americans are starting to embrace Kate again, Celia? Because, you know, they did go through a moment where Meghan was the big star and they loved the fact there was an American princess. But do you think they're almost gravitating towards Kate again? Because she's actually the epitome of royalty. And that's the reason why Americans have always gravitated to the royal family, because they're not celebrities. Because let's be honest, Americans do celebrities best, don't they?
They do it better than anyone else. It's true. And the thing they love about us and have always loved is the sort of quaintness and the old-fashionedness of our royal family. But actually, I think what people don't understand here is that, you know, you say we're going back towards Kate, but I don't think we really. I mean, in all the time I've lived in America, so almost 15 years, the love for Kate has just been. I mean, people adore her. They always have. Yes, and you can always tell from the nail salons. That's where you hear everything. I knew she would win because of what people were talking about in nail salons, and it's the place. And they think she is the sort of epitome of a princess because she's very dignified. She's never put her foot wrong. You know, she looks the part. And she sort of always keeps it together, but also mucks in. You know, she'll join into whatever the sporting event is. She'll always have a go, and they just think she's absolutely wonderful out there. But it is funny that Meghan hasn't taken over, because you would think they would embrace one of their own. But I think the latest polls said that Kate was twice as popular as Meghan now. So.
Fascinating. And I mean, Celia, how do you feel about it on a personal level, that given what the Queen was going through in those final weeks with very poor health, and given what Harry's father, Charles, is now going through, grieving his mother while having to take on arguably the biggest job in the world. How do you feel about this idea that Harry plans to push ahead, releasing some sort of tell-all autobiography where he's going to slag off both his father and his stepmother, Camilla? And as you say, they're still intending to run with this tell-all Netflix documentary too. Doesn't it just feel so crass in the circumstances following the Queen's death?
It certainly does. But I mean, from what I gather from the headlines, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I gather in both areas with the autobiography and the Netflix documentary that they're desperately trying to sort of undo whatever it is that they've already done. And of course the problem with that is all it takes is one person to leak the sort of pre-tweaked manuscript, for example, and then you're in trouble. But I like the idea of after someone dying, it being a clean slate, and particularly someone as important as the Queen. I do think it would be wonderful if they could acknowledge the mistakes that they've made, even to themselves, and maybe, just sort of try and do better. So I like the idea of extending, of even us as a country, slightly extending an olive branch and thinking, okay, well, maybe if you stop slagging off everyone, then we'll give you a second chance. But they need to stop, and they need to start a new narrative from now on.
Yeah. The thing is, I just don't think they have it in them, given that they did that Oprah Winfrey interview knowing that Prince Philip was on his deathbed, and then Meghan did that disgraceful interview in the Cup magazine knowing that the Queen was, or the late Queen, was seriously ill. So I don't really think it's their style, to stop talking. And I think actually it will be their downfall. I think the best thing that they could do is just zip it and shut up for a bit.
I know. I think you and I ought to maybe just be taken on as their PRs, and we would.
Well, they've just sacked their latest ones. Did you hear that?
That's a vacancy.
Yeah. I mean, that is the most thankless job in the world, Celia. The other thing is, by the way, I think they've already proven this week that they have no plans of changing, because did you see that Charles and Camilla and Kate and William released that beautiful official photograph of them on Sunday, showing that they were the future of the royal family, and it was a bit like, anything you can do, we can do better, because literally 24 hours later, Harry and Meghan issued their official portrait, which, by the way, is completely delusional, because what are you offering an official portrait for? To show that you're the Prince and Princess of Montecito? But I think it showed they're still trying to play a game of one-upmanship with the royal family.
Yeah. Very much so. And I think also if you observed her stance in that photograph, it was very presidential. It was very much, sort of Hillary Clinton, oh yes, watch out for me. Because I think that is the ultimate end game, probably, is to be US president.
She wants to be in the White House. Honestly, I remember speaking to people working for her when she was still in the royal fold, still a working member of the royal family. And they said, Dan, mark my words, she is already planning to one day run for the Democratic Party in America. It's just astonishing. I don't think that will end up happening, because even the Democrats are surely not that stupid. But Celia Wootton.
No, she'll give it a good go. I do think that's true.
She will. Celia Wootton, thank you so much. Star Daily Telegraph columnist, absolute pleasure to speak to you. But coming up, I'll meet the widow and children's author reduced to driving a truck simply for standing with J.K. Rowling, Gillian Phillip, uncancelled, and live with me at 10:40. But first in the media buzz, with Liz Truss on the ropes and a government civil war brewing over benefits, were the Conservatives wrong to depose Boris Johnson? Debating this in just a few minutes, my superstar panel of top-up Daily Mail columnist Van Patel, the author and journalist Rebecca Reed, and more than any other role, I think, tonight, father of our deposed Prime Minister Stanley Johnson. Back in just a couple of minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. Lots of front pages now. The Daily Telegraph reports on Liz Truss's warning that disruption is the price of success. In tomorrow's conference speech, she will warn of further economic disruption in a bid to deliver economic growth, but says her policies are essential to end the drift and delay. Brace for change, says Truss the disruptor. That's the Times headline as they also preview the PM's conference speech. The Daily Star have ever so slightly twisted Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng's words to our very own Liam Halligan today after he said that the stress of the Queen's death contributed to his botched budget. It's all the Queen's fault, is the headline. That isn't, if you watch the GB News interview, that isn't really what he said, but clever spin there. The Daily Mail leads with an exclusive, and hallelujah, in a historic move, police chiefs have agreed for the first time to attend every burglary. The landmark deal continues Home Secretary Suella Braverman's impressive start to her new role. And one of our superstar panellists, Sarah Vine, makes the front page with her column in which she says Truss has broken the first rule of politics: keep your friends close, but your enemies, like my ex-husband, even closer. That's the snaky Michael Gove, by the way. Adore Sarah, though, but I will be reading that column with interest. The Daily Express leads with the PM's speech to Tory party conference tomorrow. Truss will say Britain will be better for the disruption. Oh, I'm intrigued by this one. An exclusive in the Sun, but it's one of those anonymous ones. A married BBC star has fathered a love child with a stripper and then dumped her by text when he found out she was pregnant. The woman was made to sign a gagging order to stop her from ruining the man's career. It just says he's a prime-time BBC presenter. Who on earth could that be? More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel.
I wonder if it's a news or a
Sarah Vine?
sports person.
Who
You just
knows,
said Sarah Vine
Amanda?
when you pointed to me. Amanda Patel, actually.
What did I just say?
You said Sarah Vine.
Oh, she's on my mind because of
Yeah,
that
well,
amazing
okay.
column.
Shall I leave now,
No,
then?
please. Please don't. That's such a Freudian slip. Top Daily Mail columnist, also usually on the front page, Amanda Patel, the environmentalist former MEP Stanley Johnson, and the author and journalist Rebecca
Sarah Vine.
Now, I always knew the decision to depose Boris Johnson could spell electoral suicide for the Tory party, but the fact those same pathetic and devious MPs have abandoned Liz Truss less than a month into the job, I'm sorry, I just think it's despicable. Here's former Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, who is among a group of Tory MPs openly talking about her demise.
But it's possible that you could change leader again if she does badly.
Look, of course, anything is possible. Anything is possible. But I think she has this opportunity in the next 10 days to reverse some of the problems of the last 10 days.
But be warned, if she is gone, the Tory wets like Shaps will want Rishi Sunak in place to launch his vision for the country, which will be high tax, high spending and, most importantly, anti-conservative. Back in the real world, however, for many in the Tory membership, the only electable option is the person they never wanted to get rid of in the first place, Boris Johnson. Well, we sent our very own Reverend Calvin Robinson to capture the mood of conference and also find out if there's any way back for Boris.
Do you think we need to bring Boris Johnson back to save the Conservative Party?
No.
No.
Well, to be honest, I never wanted him to go.
Do you think Boris Johnson should come back to save the party?
Too early to say. We've got to live, let's trust a chance.
The party members as a rule, yes, and people I speak to in the street, yes, especially in the north where I'm from.
Fascinating responses there, but do you think the civil war in the Conservative Party shows what a massive mistake they made forcing Boris out? And I mean, Amanda Patel, we both hate to say, I told you so, but we were saying for weeks, when Tory MPs were considering doing this, you were going to come to rue stabbing Boris in the back.
It was an act of abject self-harm, of collective, madness. And you look now, and look, I've still got Mum's rosary beads on, even though Zoe tells me that they're clacking my microphone. I have not taken them off because I will not stop praying that Liz can pull it around. But, we've got to be full of hope. We've got to against all the odds. But we all know that if there was a different blonde of a different gender standing there doing this conference tomorrow, doing the leader's speech, if it was Boris, we wouldn't be worried about a landslide victory for Labour.
Because, Stanley, look, I know, obviously you've got skin in the game here, but you are also a Conservative Party member, of course, and the whole issue with this is that the members, they're trying to back Liz Truss, but they never wanted Boris gone in the first place. This was something enforced on them by the Tory Party MPs who are now trying to do the same thing to Truss.
I listened to you, Dan, and I think back to the 2016 referendum.
Yeah.
I didn't want the country to vote to leave Europe.
No.
But I tell you, I accepted that vote. Speaking personally, I didn't want Boris to be turfed out in the way he was. I think he described it once as the greatest stitch-up since the Bayer Tapestry. We are where we are. So I take a Brexit view of this. What are we doing now? We're looking to the future. And I'm not going to join in this chorus of saying, it's a meltdown for Liz Truss. I don't see it that way. I think there's some really important things she can do, and I don't want to sound as though I'm just a one-man band here, but honestly, I think she does have to get a grip with this environment business and realise that we can't have the economic dash she wants without the environmental emphasis, which, to be fair to Boris, he really did really push. So, speaking totally objectively, I would say that at least on some key issues for me, the jury is still a bit out on this current administration.
Yeah, but the point is, Rebecca Reid, when you take away the official mourning period for the Queen, she's had less than 20 days. And for someone like Grant Shapps...
Why are you taking that away? She had the greatest privilege any leader's ever got. She had 12 days of calm where everybody was looking at other things, where she could predominantly, apart from having to pick an odd hat for the funeral...
Come on, you said it was a fascinator.
It was
we know it's a really
terrible
fascinator.
Should not exist. But anyway, she had actually more time, more privacy, more quiet to work on her plan than any other leader did. Boris came in and had to get going
Rebecca,
straight away.
Do you concede it is deranged for cabinet ministers just a few weeks ago to be saying that Liz Truss has 10 days?
Absolutely, I agree with you totally.
Absolutely.
Let's have a sense of proportion about this. We have a leader, she's there, she's photogenic. I know that's not important, but it's important for a whole lot of people. She is determined and she will get the job done. But the question is, for me, can we make sure she gets the right job done?
I think the problem is, once you get this atmosphere of chaos and panic, it's a bit like when you're trying to get ready to go to a party and you don't like any of your outfits and you start being like, maybe I want my netball skirt from school or some tinsel from the Christmas tree. You just panic and throw anything on, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're going, OK, it hasn't worked in less than a month, we'll have someone else.
It's the future of the country at stake. I mean, Amanda Patel, do you see any potential way, in all seriousness, where Boris could return before the next election?
No, I do not. I'm sad to say I don't. And the only hope we have now is that these ambitious backstabbers learn from the history, learn the lessons we learned from Boris. I mean, you've got...
So Liz Truss is the Prime Minister.
She's the
come
Prime Minister.
the next election,
they
come what may.
They have to support her. We have to support her. The country would not tolerate another leadership election. If the men in grey suits came in and said, you have to stand down and it's going to be Rishi Sunak, we would be 100 points behind in the polls.
Well, we'd be a lot.
We just have to... We are where we are, and we have to stay firm.
So you don't... So, Stanley, you don't see any way that Boris will be back before the next election?
No, I can 100% sure that will not be the case. I mean, I'm not a betting man, but I bet my tie.
No, the tie. He's got boobies on his tie.
What? Well, I thought they were paying, but actually, I tell you something, this is the tie of the Galapagos organisation, Galapagos Conservation Organisation, and these are blue-footed boobies. There are blue-footed boobies, there are red-footed boobies, and there are the Nazca boobies. So if we manage to get away from the Boris conversation, we can get on to the booby conversation.
Tie?
Oh, by the way...
Not to bring it away from boobies.
Yeah, sure.
But just to talk about politics a little bit, because sometimes that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
I was here on New Year's Eve, because I was very pregnant, I had nothing else to do. And I said that this year Boris will go and we'll have another female Prime Minister. So I'm clearly a bit psychic. And I'm telling you what's going to happen is 2 more years of Liz, 4 years of Keir, and then Boris back in. That's what's going to happen.
Oh, by the way, Stanley, I meant to ask, have you watched the Sky drama?
I wanted to ask you this. I watched it last night.
Well, now you have to watch all 6 episodes, and I will tell you that I have not watched all 6 episodes. I have watched 2 episodes, and I was slightly disappointed to have to read someone's comment saying, you know, Kenneth Branagh looks a bit old. He looks a bit like Stanley.
That was me. I wrote that in my column.
Did you? That was you, was it? So I felt a bit offended.
But can I just say, now, having seen you in your booby tie, you were so much slimmer than Boris ever was.
I'm not commenting on...
Can I take it all back?
No,
on TV.
Boris is very slim.
Does someone play you in the show? Is there a Stanley in the show?
I haven't got onto Para 3 and Para 4 and Para 5 and Para...
I've seen the first 2 episodes. Stanley, I will say it for you. It is a despicable portrayal, isn't it? And it's not at all.
I think it's quite good.
Well,
I think it's
just as a drama. I don't know him, but as a drama, I think it's quite interesting.
Well,
they got Carrie's hair wrong, though.
I think we should move on. Can we move back to boobies or something?
We'll move on. But you're going to love this, because I couldn't believe my ears over the weekend when I heard David Lammy actually showing some contrition and humility. The Shadow Foreign Secretary was forced to issue a grovelling apology to Mark Fulbrook after he falsely accused the number 10 Chief of Staff of vote rigging and corruption in Puerto Rico on his LBC show 2 weeks ago. This is the problem, isn't it? When you hire a Labour frontbencher to host your apparently impartial radio show, this is what might happen.
A suggestion was made that Mr. Fulbrook was involved with vote rigging. I'm happy to confirm that Mr. Fulbrook isn't facing any allegations of vote rigging and to apologise for any distress caused by the incorrect suggestion.
Here you go. Enjoyed that. Rebecca Reid, Stanley Johnson, Man Patel, do stand by. Because coming up, she certainly exemplifies the hatred of the left, but will the nurse who said Tory voters don't deserve to be resuscitated by the NHS be named tonight's greatest Britain or Union jackass? We'll reveal at 10:50. But first, she had an incredible career as a children's author until she publicly aligned with J.K. Rowling. Now, she's been reduced to driving a truck. I'll uncancel Gillian Phillip after we take a very quick look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as Liz Truss delivers a do-or-die speech at conference, will she manage to stave off yet another Tory rebellion? I'll bring you the best analysis from political insiders and analysts, as well as my superstar panel. Former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. Plus, will fear of offending China prevent us from ever learning the truth about the origins of COVID? The man who wrote the book on this very subject, Matt Ridley, isn't given up. He joins me live. And there's opinion galore from Rod Little, Brendan O'Neill and man of the people Charlie Lawson. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. The publishing industry, once a bastion of free speech and creative expression, is now governed by the toxic intolerance of the far left. That was the tragic discovery of successful children's author Gillian Phillip, who lost everything after her support for women's rights sparked an unhinged backlash online. Gillian had 40 books published while working with her employer as a freelancer for more than a decade, including the 7 books she penned in the successful Survivor series under the collective pseudonym Erin Hunter. But all of that counted for nothing when in June 2020 she dared to add the hashtag I stand with JK Rowling to her Twitter bio. Events followed a familiarly chilling pattern. It began with a barrage of death threats, led to vicious emails demanding she was sacked, and ended with her employer cowing to the calls for cancellation. Despite being well aware Gillian had lost her husband just 6 weeks earlier, leaving her as the sole supporter of their teenage twins, her publishing bosses appeased her abusers by mercilessly ending her contract. A few weeks later, her literary agent dumped her too. Her successful writing career had been unceremoniously ended because of her beliefs, but Gillian remained resilient and keen to find a new and exciting challenge while providing for her bereaved family. She swapped the literature for lorries. In September 2020, she became a qualified HGV driver and has since clocked up thousands of miles delivering goods around the Scottish Highlands. I'm delighted to say Gillian joins me now. So Gillian, what an absolutely terrible tale, and it's so shocking this happened to you. But in hindsight, do you have any regrets with standing publicly with JK Rowling, given what's happened?
Hi, Dan. I have absolutely no regrets.
Good on you.
It was a terrible time. It was a horrible thing to happen. It was a really nasty thing to go through. It felt absolutely poisonous, and it really beat me down. But I don't regret it because it was the right thing to do. It just was. And I've always kind of known that deep inside, and I've never regretted doing it. I do it again.
But the reality is, Gillian, because you were prepared to support JK Rowling over the fact that she believes in biological sex, and by the way, she's always been very clear she also believes in rights for trans people too, you couldn't work as an author. I mean, it's just beyond chilling what has happened to our publishing industry.
Yeah, well, they're so cowed by it's just the thought of a mob. They're terrified. And the trouble is the publishing industry doesn't know where the next kind of panic is going to come from and what's going to be the next issue that's going to get authors cancelled. But there's a whole bunch of people online who are basically anonymous. They're trolls, but they think like it started with kind of book bloggers and Goodreads reviewers and everything, thinking that they didn't just have the right to an opinion on a book. You know, did I like this book? Did I not? Every author gets bad reviews, and you expect that. You expect bad reviews, but they kind of started to think that they didn't just have a right to comment on the book and whether it was good or not. They decided they had a right to comment on the author's beliefs, whether the author should have a job at all, what the author should be allowed to write about, what the author should be allowed to think. And publishers should have stood up to that straight away. When it first began to happen, they should have stood up and said, no, that's, our entire industry is about expression, freedom of speech, freedom of thought. But they didn't. They caved the first few times it happened, and they've gone on caving ever since. And they really kind of shame the history of the publishing industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complete disgrace. And thank you so much for coming on to share your story. That was the brilliant children's author turned lorry driver, Gillian Phillip. But it's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return. Amanda Patel, who is your nominee for Greatest Britain tonight, please?
Well, it was going to be Suella Braverman, but after that interview, it is now Gillian Phillip, and everyone should go out and buy her books and support her. Make that your early Christmas present for everyone you know.
What an incredible woman, I agree.
Yeah,
Stanley
a lot
Johnson,
of courage.
Your nominee. Stanley, who are you going for?
Yeah, no, I go for Richard Benwell. Fantastic guy. He's the CEO of Wildlife and Countryside Link, and on behalf of 70 environmental organisations, and with several million voters there too, he has written to the government, to the Prime Minister actually, saying, please don't trash the environment in your dash for growth.
And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
Mine's Kwasi, which is weird because last week he was my union jackass. But I do genuinely think there's a real skill in saying, do you know what? I screwed that one up. It wasn't good and I'm going to just try again. I think we could all learn from that.
No, I feel the opposite. I think he should have stood by his beliefs.
Of course you do.
But I'm going to go with Amanda and Gillian Phillip, our uncancelled guest, because how brave and
She's
how
great.
shocking that you can lose your livelihood for standing up for J.K. Rowling. Goodness me. Union Jackass time now. There she is. Union Jackass time now. Amanda Patel, your nominee.
I'm renaming it to Union Jackal because I think that Michael Gove, we should stop calling him a snake and call him what he is. He's like that horrible character Bonsai from The Lion King, you know, the horrible jackal who's always going slithering, or not slithering, because that's what snakes do, sneaking around and going to try and kill people and chewing their guts out. I mean, that's what we want. Michael Gove.
Yeah.
Union Jackal.
Very good point. Stanley Johnson, your nominee?
Well, I love Jacob Rees-Mogg. I mean, you know, he's a friend. But on this occasion, I've got to say, I nominate him because he is the man who has put before Parliament a proposal to scrap 750 environmental laws and impose a sunset clause so that if we don't get it, then everybody thinks it's...
And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
I mean, I actually think Stanley's got a very good point. But mine is the woman who said that anybody who voted Tory shouldn't be resuscitated because it wasn't a very nice thing to say. And I like to think that it's possible to be left-wing and not horrid. And I think that was fairly horrid.
Let's have a look at this terrible moment.
Miranda, you were a nurse, correct?
I was.
But I hear it sort of broke you.
I could not handle the emotional stress of not being able to deliver for my patients. If you are there to do a job as a compassionate person, there are no resources, and you are told persistently on the news that, you know, care homes are being ring-fenced. It's a lie, and I'm sorry, but if you have voted Conservative, you do not deserve to be resuscitated by the NHS.
Oh, hang on.
Amanda Patel, what?
Jesus. Well, I'd be dead, wouldn't I? I mean, what on earth do you think? That's the awful thing about, like, you and me, Dan, is that if we're in hospital lying in that bed with someone like her, they might recognise us.
Yeah, exactly.
And they would not resuscitate
us. And that is why
us.
Miranda Hughes is tonight's Union Jackass. Great choice, Rebecca Reid. Thank you so much to Rebecca Reid, Stanley Johnson, and the fabulous Amanda Patel. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Thank you so much for your company tonight. Headliners is up next. Good night.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update. A wet and windy start to Wednesday. A pretty mild start as well. Temperatures won't be falling too far overnight as we see further cloud and rain coming in. This little area of low pressure is developing as it approaches the UK, and that's going to spark the wet and windy conditions for most come tomorrow morning. That rain really picking up at the moment across parts of Northern Ireland. It's going to be a pretty wet night here, but that rain also extending north across Scotland, and we'll see further outbreaks of rain through the night across Wales. Parts of northern England as well, but much of the south and east of England will stay dry, but everywhere it's going to be pretty windy, very cloudy, and that all adds up to a very mild night with temperatures certainly in the south staying in the teens and double digits further north. But it will be a wet and windy start to Wednesday across much of northern Britain and down across Wales. Heavy